Hello and welcome to The Report, Cal State Fullerton's premier source for news, views, and info. I'm Evan Boydston.
I'm Cassidy Jo Fortin.
I'm Morgan Klein.
And I'm Michael Groover. Today's episode is all about the 2016 election, from the primaries to the news of violence and protests at multiple rallies throughout the country.
We'll also be talking about what could happen if no Republican candidate receives the minimum amount of delegates needed for the nomination.
Plus, I'll be taking you to the CSUF's Women's Center to talk to their coordinator about the amenities the center offers, as well as some of the events being held on campus for Women's History Month.
All this and more on this episode of The Report.
Now, before we get to the latest news on the election, we want to welcome both Cassidy Jo Fortin and Michael Groover to the panel. Thank you both for being here. So tell us some of the things you guys have done at Titan TV.
Well, I am lucky enough to be producing a wonderful little show called The Report, with you as well, right?
Here we are.
And beyond that, I am working at Titan TV on another show called Titan Radio Live. You can check it out on the YouTube channel for Titan TV, CSUF. And beyond that, I do a talk radio show on Titan Radio called The Michael Groover Program, as if I couldn't get more self-absorbed. My mom is the only one that listens, but it's great.
Super involved. And then Cassidy Jo, you're from Tech On. How do you like it?
I love it. I mean, as you know, since you were a host for it last year, it's a lot of fun. We talk about all the latest technology, new gadgets that are coming out on the market and ways that they can help students. We recently did an episode all about our IT department here on campus, and so it's a lot of fun. I love it.
Yeah, you guys are keeping the show up, so it looks good.
Thanks.
Well, thank you both for being here today. Let's get started. Today's hot topics are devoted to the 2016 election, and with only 3 months of primaries left, things are heating up for both Republicans and Democrats. This past Tuesday, the candidates went through the third round of Super Tuesday primaries, and it proved to be a beneficial week for both parties' frontrunners, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton picked up victories in Florida, Illinois, North Carolina, and Ohio, where she faced off against Bernie Sanders. Clinton also technically won in Missouri by 1/2 of a percentage point, but the delegates in that state will be divided evenly between Clinton and Sanders. Bernie Sanders, who had gained momentum following his surprise win in Michigan, didn't win any primaries during this round of voting, but has vowed to stay in the race despite being 781 delegates behind Clinton. Sanders has said that he is looking ahead to the next round of primaries, particularly in Arizona. Clinton, meanwhile, shifted her focus from Sanders to GOP frontrunner Donald Trump this week, citing him as her biggest competition and promising her supporters a large-scale victory in a possible face-off against the real estate mogul. Of the 2,383 delegates needed for the nomination, Clinton has 1,606, while Sanders only has 825.
Meanwhile, on the Republican side of the race, Donald Trump continues to lead the delegate count after his 4 victories during the third round of Super Tuesday primaries. Trump saw victories in Illinois, North Carolina, Missouri, and even in GOP candidate Marco Rubio's home state of Florida. Rubio suspended his campaign late Tuesday night, warning voters, quote, "Do not give in to the fear, do not give in to the frustration," end quote. Trump did lose one primary election this past Tuesday to John Kasich in his home state of Ohio. Kasich promised voters that his victory can turn things around for his campaign and possibly make him the GOP frontrunner, while Ted Cruz argued this week that Kasich staying in the race only furthers the odds that Trump could secure the GOP nomination. Of the 1,237 delegates needed for a Republican nomination, Donald Trump has 673, Ted Cruz has 411, and John Kasich has 143. All this news comes as the possibility of a contested convention for the GOP looms in the background. Trump says that if he doesn't secure the nomination through his majority share of delegates, there may be a mass uprising amongst voters that could lead to riots. Each party's candidates will meet again next Tuesday for yet another round of primaries in Arizona and Utah, with a special Democratic-only primary taking place in Idaho. What do you guys think of this past week's elections?
You know, it's interesting. I was not feeling too super on this past Super Tuesday, so I literally sat there and watched everything going down, and it was just really interesting. I know Marco Rubio said a week prior that whoever wins the state of Florida will pretty much be the candidate for the GOP. And unfortunately, he lost, and Trump won that. And Trump won a majority of that. So it's just interesting. And if this turns into a brokered convention, then Trump was quoted saying there would be riots. So I think it's interesting to see how this plays out.
And how do you feel about Hillary Clinton turning all of her attention away from Bernie Sanders and focusing more on the Republican candidates? In my opinion, that's like counting your chickens before they hatch. What do you guys think of this?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that there's definitely still more primaries to take place between the Democratic candidates. So I feel like maybe they should she should take it a little bit more seriously, I would say.
Agreed, yeah.
I mean, I just think it could be a wake-up call, though, for Bernie Sanders supporters to actually go out and vote, because he has a phenomenal presence online and in social media, but he doesn't really, obviously the young voters aren't really going out and actually supporting him. So it's interesting, because Hillary doesn't have near as good of presence on social media compared to Bernie. So it's just the numbers don't really add up when you look at it like that, but it makes sense because maybe our generation they feel like their voice doesn't matter, or their vote doesn't count. Definitely. Something like that. So.
Yeah, I think that our generation has a problem with thinking that just because we put it onto our social media page that we are doing what needs to be done. That's not the end of the fight for Bernie supporters. So yeah, they need to get out there to those polls. It's really important, right? Yeah. In other election news, the controversy surrounding Donald Trump's campaign continues to grow amidst news of multiple Trump rallies being interrupted by violence and protests. Just this past week, 2 separate journalists, one for CBS and another for Time magazine, reported being aggressively detained by both police and Secret Service agents during chaotic rallies in Chicago and Virginia. And Michelle Fields, a reporter for Breitbart, says she is filing a lawsuit against Trump's campaign manager, Corey Lewandowski, after he allegedly forcefully grabbed her as she attempted to ask Donald Trump a question. Trump was quoted by CNN as having said, quote, "Perhaps she made the story up. I think that's what happened," end quote. Meanwhile, multiple Trump rallies have been met with protests that have broken into violence in many states. A North Carolina man was charged with assault after punching a protester who was part of a group of people being ejected from the building. Said the man afterwards, quote, "The next time we see him, we might have to kill him," end quote. Protests continued into Missouri and Illinois, where one rally in Chicago had to be canceled in the wake of multiple protesters showing up. Trump has been quoted multiple times as having said that there is no violence at his rallies. It's obvious that there is violence at his rallies, and I think the point that we should probably try to work around here is, regardless of Republican and Democrat, it doesn't matter. Violence at political rallies is something that is not needed, especially in this day and age.
Right.
I think we have proven ourselves as a society to be capable of more than just violence. So my question to you is, do you agree? Do you think that, do you think he's doing enough? Do you think that he's kind of right and it's not as big of a deal as people are making it out to be? What is your opinion?
Well, I mean, I think I was watching Kasich's speech when he won Ohio, and he had a Trump supporter start yelling out, "Trump, Trump," and Kasich and all the people around him started shoving the guy to get him out, because obviously it's at Kasich's speech and everything. So one thing that Kasich said was, "I remember back in the 70s when you can actually have a peaceful protest," and he was trying to calm everyone down, saying, "Please stop, stop, stop." So we know that Kasich does not condone the violence, obviously. And also at Marco Rubio's farewell speech, there was a Trump supporter who stood up and said an expletive, Marco Rubio, and then Trump for president. And Marco Rubio was like, "Don't worry, you're not going to get beat up at my rally." So they both don't want that to happen. They're standing up against it.
The same thing is happening on the opposite side of the aisle with Democrats. Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders have both been outspoken against Donald Trump, and not saying that it's his fault that these things are taking place, but that the fault comes onto Trump because he is not denying these things, and he's also not standing up against them. And they're saying that's the crucial difference. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. I just think it's so sad that, I mean, during these elections, like, all this violence is going on, and it's like, okay, we need to come together as, like, a society and, like, really think about, like, our candidates and, like, where we see our country, and I think it's sad that people are spending more time literally fighting over it than actually, like, coming together, and I just think it's so sad, but...
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of angst right now.
Yeah.
For sure.
I think people are also, like, extremely nervous, too. We have a lot of good candidates, but I feel like there's a lot of, people are, like, torn a lot between good candidates, and it's kind of scary because where are we going to see it in 10 years, you know? So. And in other political news, President Obama announced his nominee to replace Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia. Appeals Court Judge Merrick Garland was announced as Obama's premier choice as Scalia's replacement, even though the Republican-controlled Congress has vowed not to only refuse any Obama nominee, but to flat out ignore the request in the first place. Republican Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said that while Garland may qualify, he would rather leave the decision to the American voters in the form of the November elections. Merrick Garland, who has been a judge in Washington, D.C.'s Court of Appeals for 18 years, is well-liked by both Republicans and Democrats alike. And the president noted in his Rose Garden speech that for the Republicans to deny Merrick a hearing would be detrimental and, quote, unprecedented, end quote. Take a look at some of the highlights from the nominated speech.
Today I am nominating Chief Judge Merrick Brian Garland to join the Supreme Court. Over my 7 years as president, in all my conversations with senators from both parties, in which I asked their views on qualified Supreme Court nominees, and this includes the previous 2 seats that I had to fill, the one name that has come up repeatedly from Republicans and Democrats alike is Merrick Garland. Because our Supreme Court really is unique. It's supposed to be above politics. It has to be, and it should stay that way. I have fulfilled my constitutional duty. Now it's time for the Senate to do theirs. I could not be prouder of the work that he has already done on behalf of the American people. He deserves our thanks, and he deserves a fair hearing. And with that, I'd like to invite Judge Garland to say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the greatest honor of my life, other than Lynn agreeing to marry me 28 years ago. It was the sense of responsibility to serve the community, instilled by my parents, that led me to leave my law firm to become a line prosecutor in 1989. Fidelity to the Constitution and the law has been the cornerstone of my professional life, and it is the hallmark of the kind of judge I have tried to be for the past 18 years. If the Senate sees fit to confirm me to the position for which I have been nominated today, I promise to continue on that course. Mr. President, it's a great privilege to be nominated by a fellow Chicagoan. I am grateful beyond words for the honor you have bestowed upon me.
Okay, so what do you guys think is going to happen with this decision? Mitch McConnell thinks that it's up to the American people to have this decision. Do you guys agree or disagree?
Well, we have a long ways to wait for the American people to vote because he wants them to vote in the election. There's a long time between here and November, so I say we just go ahead, let President Obama nominate someone, let the Congress say yes or no, and let's just move on.
Well, the problem is, we've talked about this on the show before, that typically for the last time there has been nominations, it's been about a 100-day period of pretty much of a turnover rate. So the fact that nothing's going to happen because the Republicans aren't going to budge, especially with someone like Merrick Garland, he is actually pretty much right down the middle. He's known for able to just take the law at what it is from the written law and from face value and everything like that. Unbiased opinion. He's known for that. He's pretty much as moderate as you can get, which would be great because he would be the swing person no matter what, instead of having a one-sided judge. Sorry, I can't think the
bias.
word. Bias, yeah. Opinion for a case or whatever. Absolutely. So I don't know. I just think it's kind of crazy that they're not even accepting him, even though there are 7 supporters of him from when he was nominated before, back in I think '97 when Hillary Clinton wanted to appoint him for the D.C. district courts. And there are still 7 Republicans that wanted him, and they're still running, or they're still in the Senate right now. So it's just interesting that they're so against it, even though he is so great for it.
Yeah, I think it's ridiculous that they're stalling so much. I think there's so many games being played on both sides. Like President Obama choosing him is a great choice because he's a moderate person. He's someone who's kind of in the middle, well-liked by both Republicans and Democrats. And I can see that move was made because he's trying to kind of make the Republicans look bad. It's still a great choice. But the point I want to make is, like, I think that we have a responsibility as a country to uphold the Constitution, and we're really messing with that by having it be 4 and 4 people, because we're asking for a divided country when we already have division in so many other aspects of our government. I think that the Supreme Court should be a place where there is no division, and judges are not looked to because they're Republican or Democrat. They're looked to because they know the Constitution. And Merrick Garland has more than proven himself to do that, and I think that it's really, like, should be seen as a threat to the American people that the government, and especially the Congress, is not doing more to fill that seat, because it's something that is more than necessary to function as a country, you know?
And especially, like, looking at Obama's duties, like, do we think, like, Obama should have the right to nominate Garland without having, like, the Republicans interfere? Like, that's another thing, too, to look at, is, like, people are getting mad, but
Executive order.
He's also still our president, like, you know, like,
Totally.
it's still his duty, it's still his responsibility.
Yeah,
so.
he and like you said, 100 days, so that might be a great rule to work off of then. Maybe if the president has less than 100 days in his term, maybe then we can look at waiting until the election.
That's not an actual rule, though. That's just like the typical,
it's the typical time frame. But I mean, maybe they should look
at
at making that some kind of hard and fast rule, because to get in the situation where every time we're just trying to get someone in that's going to support our interests as a Republican or a Democrat, it's detrimental to the country. These things, the things that they're deciding, are not Republican and Democratic things. They're
it's cases. It's
cases.
taken at face value.
They're supposed to view it completely. They're supposed to view it completely
unbiased.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, we know that the closeness between Republican presidential candidates could lead to a contested convention come this summer for the GOP. But what exactly is a contested convention? Well, according to CNN, a contested Republican convention would come about if none of the candidates involved in the election managed to nab the required 1,237 delegates needed to head to the November ballot. If this happens, more than half of those delegates become what is called brokered, and from there, they are up for grabs.
At that point, there is no true way to predict how each delegate will vote. So delegates that were once pledged to Trump could end up going to Ted Cruz or John Kasich, or vice versa. And while Trump has said that if he has the majority of votes going into the convention, that he deserves the nomination, the rules of the convention clearly state that the candidate must have all 1,237 delegates to receive the nomination. Either way, in a race as close as this one, the Republican National Convention is shaping up to be one of the most interesting and unique ones on record.
And now for an update on a previous story. During the last episode of the report, we brought you a story about a KKK rally in Anaheim that took a violent turn when a group of protesters chased away a group of Klansmen. Well, this week, one of the Klansmen at the rally is making headlines again, this time for endorsing Hillary Clinton for president. Will Quigg, the Grand Dragon of the KKK's California chapter, has retracted his support for Donald Trump just a few days after Donald Trump finally denounced the support of an even higher leader in the white supremacy group, David Duke. According to The Telegraph, a leader of the California chapter of the KKK, Will Quigg, originally tweeted his endorsement of the Republican nominee, Donald Trump, but has since retracted, saying, quote, "We want Hillary Clinton to win. She is telling everybody one thing, but she has a hidden agenda, and once she's in the presidency, she's going to come out and her true colors are going to show," end quote. While Quigg insists that he has sources that confirm his suspicions about Mrs. Clinton and corroborate his claims, many experts speculate that Quigg's endorsement could simply be an attempt to hurt Clinton's campaign and bring her into the headlines, the same way Duke's endorsement did to Trump.
And March is Women's History Month, and the CSUF Women's Center is hosting a number of events on campus to bring awareness to the issues that women of today face. I'm here at Cal State Fullerton's Women and Adult Reentry Center with their coordinator, Rosalina Camacho, as she discusses all of the events this center hosts for both women and men. Let's take a look.
Our Adult Reentry Center program that we have has a parenting program. Men's groups come into the women's groups too. Some of our groups that are only for women will welcome them in. In March, we're having a discussion. It's a men and women's dialogue. We have peer educators for our violence prevention program. Men are integral in everything. When we did Women's History Month, our thoughts too, yeah, we're focusing on women, but we want men there because if men come, they're going to know what it's affecting women and vice versa. And that fluidity is really important. We need to change that stigma that society puts on us, or the media, that men have to be tough all the time. We're a very friendly office. Our student staff is trained to really notice if somebody's looking around and saying, hey, you know, come on in, the Women's Center, we're the Women's Center, let me tell you a little bit about us. Are you looking for somebody in particular? We have a lot of events going on. So we'll open it up where it's safe so that they feel comfortable until they're ready to tell us why they're here. We need to, as an institution, know that as a university, we want to make sure not only you're getting the information from an educational standpoint, but ground yourself in who you are. We have a couple student groups. We have AWARE, we have an honor society, or Sister Talk, or our Consent is Key. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. This is when we really get a lot of the men involved even more, because we have a Walk for Change. We have the Clothesline Project. Clothesline Project, if you've never seen it, it's really impactful. It's people creating t-shirts for different violence that they've experienced, and this is where men are writing on these t-shirts because they've been victims of crimes too, and we don't realize it.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Rosalina. I'm Morgan Klein. I'm here reporting from the Women's Center. And where can we find you?
So you can find the Women and Adult Reentry Center in University Hall 205, open Monday through Friday, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays till 7 o'clock. So please come visit us.
All right, students, there you have it. Come visit Rosalina. Thank you so much.
That concludes this semester's 4th episode of The Report. Michael and Cassidy, thank you so much for being on here. Can you tell us where we could find some of your stuff?
Yeah, Titan TV, CSUF on YouTube.
Yep, Titan TV, CSUF on YouTube, and you can check out the Michael Groover program on Titan Radio.
Yay. Well, we thank you guys for being here, and as always, we thank you for watching. We hope you tune in next week for more news, views, and info. I'm Morgan Klein.
I'm Cassidy Jo Fortin.
I'm Michael Groover.
And I'm Evan Boydston. Stay fresh, Fullerton.